Hello there. I'm Ike Ellis, and I'm the lead SQL consultant and instructor and the SQL course writer for Developmentor. And I'm excited to be here with you today. Thanks for spending your Monday. I know the holidays are a pretty busy time, and a lot of you have a lot to do, and you're going to spend an hour with me. And I appreciate that. I appreciate that you showed up today. So today, we're going to talk about MDX. MDX is the query language used to query SQL Server Analysis Services cubes. And it has been around for a while. We've had it for over 10 years, and it's still a source of confusion, and it's still somewhat complicated, and it's still very important. MDX is used to query both Analysis Services multidimensional cubes and Analysis Services tabular cubes, and is still very functional and very useful, even though it hasn't really been updated that frequently lately. So who is this for? I expect that you are a developer, probably a business intelligence developer, and that you probably have some understanding of SQL or structured query language, and that you probably have been using SQL to build reports off of transactional systems for a while. And now you're probably pretty new or relatively new, or maybe you've been doing business intelligence, but you have hit a wall and you realize that maybe knowing MDX is a good thing. So I'm assuming that you have no experience with MDX, but that you have used SQL. So I'm going to just introduce basic MDX to you, and we'll see how far we get in the hour that we have. If you have any questions, feel free to throw it in the chat box, and hopefully Mary will draw my attention to it. But I tend to get single focused in my presentations and my demos, so it's difficult for me to look at the chat box. So if I don't get to you right away, I'll try to get to you at the end of the hour that we have. And then let's get right to it. So before we start with actual scripts and looking at the language, we just need to talk a little bit about some of the vocabulary inside MDX. And I apologize for not using like PowerPoint display. My display driver on my brand new MacBook Pro started crashing for some reason, so the PowerPoint kind of crashes on me, so I'm going to have to make do. So anyway, MDX vocabulary. The very first thing you need to know is the difference between a set and a tuple. This is a lot different than SQL Server. See, when we write queries in SQL Server, we're used to rows and columns, and that's fine. We have rows and columns in MDX also, but we get a lot of syntax errors in MDX if we don't know the difference between a set and tuple. So I'm kind of in a cart before the horse thing right now, because like if I show, or maybe a better analogy is chicken and the egg, if I show you MDX without explaining sets and tuples, you're not going to get it. And if I start explaining sets and tuples without showing you MDX, you're not going to get it. So here's my plan. My plan is I'm going to explain sets and tuples like 4 different times, and then I'm going to keep talking about it as we query MDX using MDX, and then hopefully by the end of the hour, you'll have a pretty good feel for what the difference is between a set and a tuple. And if you don't, it's just going to take getting your hands on it. You're just going to have to keep playing around with it and playing around with it until you finally feel comfortable with it. Also know that in MDX, we use functions a lot. And some functions use sets, and some functions use tuples. And so that's another reason why it's important to know the difference. So maybe the easiest thing to do is to start off with something that you guys know already, which is Excel. I'm sure you guys have played with Excel. It's pretty ubiquitous. And right down at the bottom of the screen, you're seeing an Excel spreadsheet. Like you're seeing name, salary per hour, hours worked, and then you're seeing rows, right? Ike, Fred, Wilma, Betty. Okay. If I said, I want to know Wilma's total hours worked, and you were in a spreadsheet, you would say, oh, I know how to get to that. I know how to reference that cell. That cell is C4. And now if I ever change Wilma's hours worked, I go to C4 and I change her hours worked. And if I ever want to reference it in another formula, easy, if I reference C4, it will always stay up to date. So that tuple is the intersection of one member from both the column of the spreadsheet and the row of the spreadsheet. And it works the exact same way in a cube. So The problem with the cube, though, is the cube is multidimensional. We don't just have rows and columns. We can have a lot of different dimensions inside our cube. We could have a country, we could have date, we could have employee, we could have product, we could have customer. We have a lot of different things that we can slice that value on. So if I say, please give me the value for internet sales for Australia for the year 2008 for the entire product category bikes, what I'm doing is I'm pointing to one cell in my cube, just like I did in my spreadsheet. And if you look at the bottom of the slide right here where it says date, is calendar year is 2008, and geography is Australia, and the category bikes, totally works. I put parentheses around that, and now I'm referencing an exact cell. Even though it might be an aggregate cell like this 2008, there might be other aggregate cells farther down the year, like in month or in date, but because I'm referencing it as year, that's a tuple, and it's one cell coming out, one value coming out, put parentheses around it, and I'm fine. Now, what would happen if I wanted to reference multiple cells in the cube? So this is called a set, and a set is a collection of tuples that have the same dimensionality, and they have curly braces wrapped around it. So if I say, okay, I want 2008 Australia, but I want bikes, I want accessories, and I want clothing, I put curly braces around all of those things, and those curly braces help me to define my set. So what I'm saying here is I actually want 3 values coming out. They have the same dimensionality. They're both going on calendar year and on country, and they're both hitting, the category, right? But I just want 3 different cells out of that category. So right here, I have an MDX query to show you, and it's the same. Look, so right here you're seeing measures internet sales amount on columns, and then for date we're seeing 2008, and then for geography we're seeing Australia, and then we want bikes and accessories. And if I go ahead and execute that, let's see, I have a parser error someplace. Let's see. I'm missing an open paren. Okay, let's put our open paren in. And then let's put my open square bracket. Uh-oh. Excuse me, wrong one. Uh-oh, where's my error? Let's see, let's go to the next query real quick. See if I did have a syntax error there. Uh-oh. I went off script and did something at the last minute, so hang on one second. Oh, I see my open print. Excuse me. I'm not seeing it really clearly. Hang on, let me give you a new MDX query and you'll see it a little bit better here. Okay, so I'm going to go from the very beginning of an MDX query. The first thing I want to show you is the structure of the MDX query is a little bit different. So look at this. This is a select from clause, and what I'm doing is I'm selecting a single cell from my AdventureWorks cube. And notice that's a lot different than T-SQL. It looks similar to T-SQL, but notice there's no like select asterisks. If I was gonna query every column and row in a table in a SQL statement, I would do select asterisk. But in this case, I'm taking select asterisk out and just straight from the cube. And what's funny about this is you're looking at this like $80 million and you're thinking, where did that $80 million come from here? What I'm taking advantage of here is a default member. And the default member for the cube is reseller sales. If I wanted internet sales, what I would do is I would find internet sales, and let's take the internet sales amount, drag that over, execute it, and I'm going to get an error. And it says, oh, hey, look, there's a syntax error here. Now, unfortunately, that syntax error isn't really clear here, and I'm going to explain how we can solve that syntax error. So the first thing to know about MDX is that what we're doing is we're taking multidimensional data and we're moving it to rows and columns. And so we're kind of tabularizing it. We're flattening it out. So right here, what I'm going to do is say, let's make this on rows. And I execute this. And I get another error, and it says, access numbers specified in a query must be sequentially specified and cannot contain gaps. Well, okay, that's a weird error, and it's a very common error to get at the beginning of MDX when you're brand new to it. So what we can do with MDX is we can say, okay, instead of rows, I'm going to say on columns. Execute that, and now I'm getting 29,358,000 internet sales amount on columns. Okay, if I wanted that 80 million, the one that you saw originally, that's just reseller sales amount. And the reason why I know that is because that's my default measure that's been specified. So if I take, that was done in my cube definition. So if I take reseller sales amount, drop that, put my spaces, excuse me, and execute that, there's my 80 million back again. Okay, so this, select from AdventureWorks, and I don't have to type all of that out actually. I can just take AdventureWorks and drop it and execute it. You'll get $80 million, so it's the same. These two are the same. Okay, so what was the problem that I had earlier where when I left on columns off, I got an error? And then I said, oh, okay, well, let's make that on rows. Let's put on columns back. And now let's specify some rows here. So what I can do is come back to, let's see, what's a good thing to do rows on? Probably like year is a good thing. So we'll take calendar, and we'll put calendar year, and we'll drop that there, and we'll say that is on rows. Okay, so this is weird. Now I specifically said, give me date.calendar year, and you're expecting to see like 2005, 2006, 2007, and so forth. And in reality, what you got was an all periods row, and you're thinking, okay, well, that was not expected. What do I do now? This is, again, a very common thing to see from SQL developers, not getting what you expect to see. Well, remember, we have that default number. Just like the reseller sales amount was my default measure, this calendar year has an aggregate at the beginning, this summarized all periods at the very top of the dimension that says that is my default member. Now, if I actually want the sub-members, I can just do type members, execute that, and now you're seeing 2005, 2006, 2007, 2008, and so forth. Okay, so, and it's all broken down. You can see that these, aggregate up to my all periods member, that $29 million number that we had at the very beginning. Okay, so now let's go back to what I was talking about with sets. So let's say that I want a very specific year. So instead of doing members, I can say, give me .calendar year, and now give me a very specific one. And what one can I do? Well, I can come down here in my cube browser, and you're seeing something very different in MDX. I'm going to actually delete this out here. And I'm going to say, I just want to see 2007. And I highlight 2007. I drop that in. And then I execute just like you saw before. And now that's just 2007. So if I want 2008, I just highlight that, put 2008 in. And now I'm seeing 2008. And now what happens if I just want both of those? Well, what I can do is copy that, comma delimit, paste it. Now I want 2007 and 2008. I execute this and I get an error. And it says, sorry, there's some ambiguity here. So what that's telling you is, hey, you guys specified a set and you need to be specific about it. So let's wrap that in parentheses real quick, see if we get that. Okay. And now let's actually, it's supposed to be There we go. Okay. So now 2008 and 2007 appear on the same query. Again, just switch my parentheses out to a curly braces, and I'm specifying a set. Okay, let's go back to the slides real quick. Okay, so sets, just put curly braces around it. So in this case, going back to the spreadsheet analogy, if I want both Ike's hours worked and Betty's hours worked, so I want the value of C2 and C5, I put curly braces around it, comma delimited, and now I have a set of values, just like in Excel. Okay, so here's some questions. Is this a set? This has curly braces around it, but it's only going for product, product categories, category, and bikes. So there's one value coming out of that set. Okay, hold the answer there. Is this a set? It just has an open curly brace and a closing curly brace. Is this a set? Grabbing data from accessories, there's a typo in that set. Let me put that there. Okay, the answer is yes, these are all sets. And the reason why they're sets is because a set can have 0, 1, or more tuples in them. And you think, well, that's kind of funny. You know, why have 0 tuples in a set? Why have 1 tuple in a set? And the reason is because we need things like average to work in our sets. So the trick here is, if you have an error in your query, try removing the parentheses around it and putting curly braces there and seeing if it works. And probably what's happening is MDX is looking for a set and you're submitting a tuple. Okay. So let's take a step back for just a second. You're a SQL developer, and you know a lot about SQL. You know that SQL has DDL statements, data definition statements like create and grant and drop. And you know that, grant is a DCL statement, a data control language statement. You also know that you can script in it. You've got while looping and if-then, and you can return and create store procedures and create views. And you're seeing all these things in SQL, and you're thinking, okay, I want to create an MDX store procedure, or I want to use MDX to create a script, or I want to do some conditional logic like if-then logic, and I want to use variables and all those cool things. Well, you've got to forget all that stuff because MDX doesn't have that. MDX is just used for querying. So you might think, okay, well now I'm limited. Why am I bothering to learn MDX? Well, the thing is, MDX has some cool things that you just can't do in SQL, or it makes it very, very difficult to do in SQL. For instance, one thing about MDX is that MDX actually knows the schema of the data, and you can use that schema when you write MDX queries. And you saw me do this already, like when you're here and you saw me say select measures.internet sales amount, and you saw date.calendar year, 2007 here. That syntax, you don't write that syntax in SQL. In SQL, that syntax looks something like this. You would say where date equals 2007, right? And then you'd say, okay, well, actually, I need to put a year around that, right? It would look something like that. And I don't have to do that. I don't have to use strings and do comparisons like that because MDX knows the cube structure. MDX knows that there's a dimension called date. It knows that it's calendar year, and it knows that there's a value there, 2007. And you saw me do that kind of cool thing because I could just drag some of these members like 2008 and drop it, and it's just kind of embedded in my MDX query. So the first thing is MDX knows the schema. T-SQL doesn't know the schema, and it doesn't know the values in the schema, right? And so because it doesn't know those values, it can't traverse it like you can in MDX. The second difference is that MDX understands the placement of the row. See, in SQL, if I said, give me value Betty, and go 4 up and find Ike, that would be a very difficult thing to do in SQL. We'd have to use CTEs and probably the row number function, and it would take a lot of code in order to do that. Although now we've got, with 2012 windowing functions, we have things like lead and lag, and so it becomes a lot easier in 2012 SQL, but it's still some work to learn that and use it. Well, MDX does this kind of navigation natively. Like, it knows the placement of a cell, and it, just like in Excel's a good example. It can tell you how to traverse data back and forth in the cube pretty easily. So another thing, when we just kind of saw this is SQL versus MDX. That's that where clause that we just kind of talked about. And now I don't need that equal sign. I can just say where date calendar year amper 2007. This query exactly. In fact, I can copy and paste that query, I think, and put it right here in my cube and execute it. Okay, and now you're seeing all the customers, and you're seeing internet sales amount, right? And you're only seeing it for 2007, and I can prove that if you look at Aaron Hayes up here at 782,600. I hope this works. I hope we made more orders in more than 1 year. If I take that where clause off, now you see Aaron Hayes has $3 million or $3,000, right? So I think that's significantly different. So, okay, so that's my where slicer. Now here's another difference between MDX that kind of freaks SQL developers out. Right here, if I said, take this, you see Aaron Hayes at $782.99, right? And I said, take that date and take it off the where clause and execute it. And you're seeing the same value, that $782.99. Now, that's different. See, this one, I don't have a where clause in this query. I'm doing filtering based on the column or based on the row here. I'm saying, hey, give it to me for 2007 here. And that's different. So you can filter in the select criteria, and you can filter in the where, and it's important to remember that. So you might be wondering, okay, why use the where? Well, watch. What happens if I take that where and I put it back into my MDX query and I execute it? And it says, hey, the calendar year hierarchy already appears in Access 1 axis. So what the where is used for is to slice on values that aren't in the query. So in my case, I have a measures internet sales amount on columns. I have my customer dimension, I have my date dimension, and if I only wanted it for like products that equal blue, I can use my where clause. I can go say, okay, give me, let's go to product, let's go to, let's see, style, do I have color equal blue somewhere? Well, let's just do it based on men's data. So if I say, give it to me based where the product style equals male, and I execute, I get significantly different results. In fact, it doesn't look like I get any results because I did something kind of off the fly. There's no data for 2007 in male. But you see the point. What I'm doing with the where clause is I'm filtering off of data that didn't exist in the select results on the MDX query. So that's why we use where clauses in MDX. And we talked about this. MDX is weird. These are the same queries. I'm filtering in the select. And then, though it looks the same, we need to remember that MDX is actually nothing like SQL. MDX knows the cube structure. SQL's tabular. MDX is multidimensional. SQL tends to be wordy and very verbose. MDX can be pretty terse. In fact, it might get some complaints about that. Functions display their arguments. So in the end, you might be better off just forgetting everything you know about SQL. Even though we have select and from, which you've seen in a couple of MDX queries already, that's about where the comparisons can end. We don't really do joining. We don't use the where clause the same way. And we've got some other differences that hopefully as we go on this session, those differences will be highlighted. Okay, so how we use MDX. We use MDX in two main ways. We do it to write queries because we're going to either use that query in reporting services or Excel or maybe Tableau or some of the other tools that we have. Or we use MDX to write expressions. And this is important. One of the main reasons why we use MDX is because in multidimensional cubes, we use them to define calculated and custom members. That's the main thing that we do. And we can also use them to define KPIs and have custom name sets. But by far, we use MDX to create these, to create calculated members. And I'll show you that before the hour is over. Okay, so the tools that I'm going to be using for the rest of the session, you saw me use SQL Server Management Studio to write queries. I'll use Visual Studio, SQL Server Data Tools BI for creating the cube and browsing the cube. I'll use Excel to browse the cube because Excel is a very good cube browser and everybody tends to have it. I also use the pivot table data extensions for MDX, and the hyperlink to download it's just on CodePlex, and it's called the OLAP pivot table extensions. And I use that so that I can create pivot tables and show you the MDX that Excel is generating when it creates a pivot table. I'm also using the AdventureWorks sample, which you can get off CodePlex. Just type in AdventureWorks CodePlex, and you'll get a whole bunch of a web page with a whole bunch of samples on it from CodePlex. And then briefly, we'll look at SQL Server reporting services for using MDX in reports. So why am I using Excel? Well, the reason I'm using Excel is because Excel is just so easy to use. And actually, you know what? I'm going to start off fresh. I'm going to right-click and go to Excel. And I'm just going to create a brand new book. Where's that book? There it is. Uh-oh, not responding. So I added an add-in unrelated to the OLAP extension add-in, and it just started crashing Excel. And I haven't had time to figure out why Excel is crashing. So hopefully this doesn't keep happening. Okay, there we go. So we don't care about this. All right. So okay, so I've got Excel here, just a blank workbook, and I want to start using data out of my multidimensional cube. What I can do is click on data, click on I want to grab it from other data sources, and I say I want it from analysis services. And the name of my server is IkeWin81. And then I just click next, and it says, what cube do you want? I want the AdventureWorks cube, and I click next, and then I click finish, and then I've already built it. That's okay, I'll replace it. Okay, and it says, okay, you're connected to that analysis services cube. What do you want to do? And for now, I'm just going to create a quick pivot table, and I click OK. And so here, I can say, give me my internet sales amount on values. And look, that $29 million value that we saw earlier in my earlier queries just kind of shows up there automatically. And if I say, okay, I want to do it by year, so I go down to date, and I find my date hierarchy, and then I say, okay, just put calendar down there, and it says, oh, you want it by year, that calendar year 2005 is 3 million and 2006 is 6 million and so forth. And if I expand this, I get my semesters and my quarters and my months, and maybe even my days, right? Okay, so what I can do here to see what Excel was doing is I can right-click, and I can use those OLAP pivot table extensions that I downloaded earlier, and I can click the MDX tab, and you'll see the MDX that it generated. So maybe it'll be easier and simpler MDX if I take the calendar hierarchy out, and instead I just put calendar year there. Oh, let's take it off the hierarchy altogether. So let me see, do I have one off the hierarchy? I think I might. Let's see. Well, I've got month. Let's see what month does. Okay, that's fine. So if I right-click and I go to MDX, okay, that's simpler MDX. And I can just copy and paste that, put it in a new query. It's formatted terribly, right? But that's the same query. Execute it, and you'll see the same results. Now you're seeing it in the columns instead of the rows like we were seeing it before, but it's the exact same value coming through, even if it might not be formatted really prettily. Okay, so Excel is a great way of playing around with MDX and finding out the query that Excel used to get results back so that you can kind of play around with it and learn it a little bit better. All right. Okay, and you saw me play with the cube browser, and now let's play with SQL Server Management Studio and go back to kind of the script we were doing before and just play around with some, and fill in some blanks that you had, maybe as you saw me deal with columns and rows. So to refresh your memory real quick, what we had was this reseller sales amount, 80 million on columns. In fact, actually, I think I prefer to work with internet sales amount. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste that. Okay, and then I'm going to kind of put it down here so that we kind of start off fresh. Okay, so that's our first MDX query, that 29 million. And you remember this error that I got where I switched to on rows and I had this error. That's a very common error. Okay, and it says access numbers specified in a query must be sequentially specified. It cannot contain gaps. Well, what I can do instead of use rows and columns is I can say change this to access 0. And if I do that, look, it puts it on columns. And if I come back here and take that year that you saw me do before, actually let's just do year.members. On access 1. Okay, and now I get all periods. Okay, so look at that query, and now let's just replace access 0 with on columns, and replace access 1 with on rows, and run the exact same query again. Same values, right? Okay, so what you're finding is that columns is an alias for this access 0, and rows is an alias for access 1. All right. I'm going to keep kind of making new queries as I progress through this because maybe you want to save this script and use it later. I'm not sure. But I'll see if I can get this script posted so that you can kind of play with it a little bit later. And we don't even have to use on access 0 and on access 1. We can actually just say on 0 and on 1. Same results. So you're seeing 3 different ways to write the same query, and sometimes that's confusing as you see demos, so just be aware of that. I prefer to use columns and rows when I'm dealing with 2 accesses because I think that is a little clearer. Accesses? Axi? I don't know. Okay. So let's take a look at, like, instead of doing date calendar year, let's take a look at some different data here. Why don't we take a look at that product? Remember we were dealing with product a little bit, and we saw that product had a, let's see, let's just type it out. We'll say we want product dot category. Okay, so we're going from the product dimension, we're doing the category hierarchy. I execute this. Let's take the customers out to simplify this and take that closing print out. Okay, oh, look, is that what you guys were expecting? The all products? Why am I getting all products now? I'm getting it because that's the default member for the product dimension. So what I can do is I can say, okay, give me category dot members, and execute that and see the results. Now that might be something you were looking for, right? Accessories is $700,000, bikes is 28 million, clothing is 339,000. Okay, so we have some categories here, and I can be specific, like you saw me before. Like I can say, okay, take that product category, and instead of doing all of them, we can just do bikes. So I can just take the members out, and I can put bikes in, and highlight that. Okay, yep, that's just bikes. Okay, and now that's weird. Wait a minute, what just happened here? Do you see where it says &1? That's not bikes. What happens if I just take that out and I say put bikes in? You see that $28 million value? Let's see what that looks like. Still 28 million. Okay, that works. So what's the difference between that and that &1 that we had before? Well, when you see an ampersand in MDX, you're using the ID of the value, and when you're seeing the bikes, you're seeing the name of the value. So that's a lot different, and it's kind of confusing at first. So why am I using ID in this query and I'm using name in this query, it's because sometimes name can be ambiguous. Famously, it would be like if we were looking for quarter one of 2005 is different than quarter one of 2006. In fact, if you saw me look at like one of those quarters, so I went to calendar date and I just dragged this down, you're seeing an ampersand. Okay, what's the ampersand mean? It means you're using the ID of the dimensional member, not the name. So what it's saying is calendar year quarter one for that value, and that's the ID. Okay. So come back here, amper1 is fine, and if I want multiple ones, I can say, okay, give me amper2, and then that's a set. So what am I going to do? I'm going to put curly braces around it, and then highlight it and execute it. And now I'm seeing bikes and components together. Or I can use the name, put curly braces around it, and then put components here. And see the same values here. Components has a null value. Okay, so another reason why we use IDs sometimes is that like cities might have the same name, and when we want to be specific about a city, we use the ID instead of the name. People, if we're trying to do employees, maybe you have multiple employees with the same name, so you want to use ID instead of name there. So use name, and then if you have any ambiguity, you might need to switch over to ID. Okay. Another thing that we can do, let's take that query again, new query, and let's simplify this. So let's just go back to category and we'll do members, and I'll take that curly brace out. And you're seeing, okay, so we can navigate this a little bit. Like you're seeing all the members of the category dimension. If I wanted just children, what's the difference? So I'm going to change from members to children, and then look at the result set and tell me what changed. Oh, it just did the children for the category attribute. It didn't have the total there. So that's good. Okay. Now, what else? So the other thing I can do is I can say, give me category let's see, give me category dot children 0. Give me the first value. Or I can say, give me the second value. That's bikes. Or I can say, give me the third value. Okay, so I can kind of navigate through the data just like that, not too bad. So let's go back to children just so we can get a view of the data. Okay, and now what happens if I want to see children.children? What happens if I say, well, if I go to children.children, I'm going to get an error. And it says, I'm sorry, I was looking for one argument. I was looking for a tuple. So I can say, okay, give it to me for the first child. Oh, so product.category is an attribute and not a hierarchy. So if I want to kind of navigate through a hierarchy, what I can do is, let's see, product.category children. Actually, I want to show you hierarchies in just 1 second. So I think I'm getting just a little bit ahead of myself. But let's, since I introduced it already, let's grab category here, drop it there, and use the product categories hierarchy. You saw me using an attribute before. This is a hierarchy now. And now let's do dot children here. You'll see the same values coming through the hierarchy. This was all done in the cube definition. Okay, same values, and now I want to see the the children underneath one of these. So 0.children and execute. And now I'm seeing bike racks, bike stands, bottles, cages, cleaners, fenders. Okay, so that's the children underneath the 0 element. And what was the 0 element? The 0 element was accessories. Doesn't that kind of make sense that the children underneath accessories were things like cleaners and fenders and lights and things like that? So you saw me kind of take one aspect of the hierarchy and navigate through. This is very similar to what you would see in Excel. In Excel, if I got rid of the date, but instead I went down to product and I looked at product categories, and you saw me drill through here, accessories, and you see bike racks, bike stands, cleaners, fenders, and then I open up cleaners and then I see, or bike racks, and I see multiple ones, perhaps maybe. Where am I going to see multiple ones? I definitely will in bikes. If I open up bikes, mountain bikes, and I see all the mountain bikes listed. So if I wanted to emulate that in MDX, it would be give me bikes. I just happen to know that that's the children one, and then underneath children, and now I see mountain bikes. So if I want to see all the mountain bikes, I can go 1, 2, and children, and now I can see all the mountain bikes. Now, I don't have to keep doing this children 1, children 1, because that's kind of ambiguous, and in code it looks terrible. So what I can do is I can say bikes.children. That's a lot different than you would do in SQL, right? Where you just specify, yep, there we go. And if I say I want mountain bikes, take that children out and say mountain bikes. Now you're seeing me do square brackets a lot. What do we use square brackets for? We use square brackets when there are spaces in the words, and you're thinking, well, in SQL, I hate spaces in the words, but in MDX, we really like it because the reality is your users are going to be using Excel, and they're browsing the cube here, and they're seeing spaces in the data because it's easier to read, and so users like spaces. So as developers, we pay a price, and we fight with these square brackets and these spaces, even though we don't like it. Because we know the users are using the cube directly. That's, we would never put users directly on a transactional database. That would just be a nightmare of teaching them relational theory and teaching them 300 different tables. Most cubes will only have maybe a dozen tables at the most, right? A dozen different elements at the most. Maybe 20 if it's huge, but even that would be really confusing and they'd be frustrated by it. So we try to keep them as simple as possible so that they can do their job and not, kind of muck in the clouds. And so we use spaces a lot in our element naming just because it's easier for them to read. Okay, so you saw me, take a look at all my bikes. Let's go back and let's just do categories.children like you saw before and execute that. And now you're seeing accessories, bikes, clothing, those kind of totals. The other thing I can do is I can kind of mix multiple elements in one of these columns or one of these rows. So you're seeing product categories children, but if I wanted, I could also say, give it to me by sales territory. So if I open up sales territory and I have country, I can just drag country over here, comma delimit it. Now, just put parentheses around it because I'm specifying another dimension. Execute it. And now you're seeing internet sales amount for all sales. Uh-oh, why am I getting all sales territories? Again, it's that default number that kind of confuses us. So I can say children here under sales territory, execute that. And now I'm getting things that you might expect me to see, Australia, accessories, bikes, clothing, components for Australia, and then for Canada, and then for France, and things like that. I'm going to copy that and do it again. It might make more sense to take that data and put it on columns. It might look better. So we'll just copy and paste it there, execute it again. Oh. So that's kind of the brilliance behind one of the things that we can do with analysis services is we can put a lot of data in a very small page. And in business intelligence, that's pretty much our goal. Our goal is to make dense, clear data so that decision makers can make accurate decisions off of it. So we put the right data in the right format at the right time and as clear and dense as possible so that they don't have to hunt and work for it. They can just get it really, really clearly and easily. And that's what you're seeing right there. Okay, so if I take this original query, though, even though it's kind of ugly, it kind of works for one of the examples that I want to show. And this is, this is more in line with what we would see in SQL, right? This is one of the main differences between MDX and SQL, actually, is to write something like this in SQL, very difficult. It's possible, but you're writing a lot of code. To write it in MDX, look at that, 4 lines, boom, and I'm done. But we're going to go back, SQL data tends to look kind of like this. And so even though it's ugly, we're going to just play with it because sometimes you guys are used to seeing data like that. So, what we're going to do is we're going to, how about we just order it? And in ordering it, you're going to learn an awful lot about how SQL works, or excuse me, how MDX works, because MDX, the first thing you need to know, I mean, this is really important, is that every cool thing you do in MDX is you use functions. And these functions here are super important. Or what we can do, let me bring up Chrome real quick. That's on my other screen. So, or you can use MDX Functions and just Bing it or Google it. And what you'll see is just this huge list of MDX functions. And if you want to get good at MDX, knowing what these functions do is really important. Because even the simplest things don't use keywords. They use functions to do simple things. So if I go back to this result and I say, I want to get rid of these null values, you're used to writing SQL where you'd say, where internet sales amount is not null. And you would want to replicate that in MDX, and you'd be frustrated because MDX doesn't have any of these keywords that you're looking for. Or if you wanted to order it by internet sales amount, you'd go order by and then you'd be frustrated because MDX doesn't have an order by like that. Remember, everything you do through functions. So if what I'm looking for is a way to get rid of the non-empty or the null, all these null values that are kind of littering my data, then the way I do that is I just put non-empty let's see. Let's actually take that non-empty and put it okay. So in this case, I'm going to say, give me all the data that has a non-empty, get rid of these null values for sales territory, country, and for product categories, children. And you can see that's exactly what that did. So instead of that where is null, just use non-empty. And if what I'm trying to do is order something, then let's take a look. Let's go ahead and take a look at my MDX reference, and let's just search on this page for order. And you see, okay, here's some, they don't look promising. Oh, here's one right here, order MDX. And if you click on it, it says, arranges members of a specified set, optionally preserving or breaking the hierarchy. Okay, don't pay attention right now to that preserving or breaking the hierarchy. We'll play with that in just a second. Let's just focus right now on the order and how that's going to work. So, and I'll show you that in just a second. Okay. So let's go back to our query, and let's put order in front of non-empty. And it says, okay, well, you're going to order, how do you want to order here? And I can say, well, actually, what I want to do is I want to order on internet sales amount. So what do you want to order first? If you go back to my reference, it says the valid multidimensional expression that returns a set. a valid numeric expression, that's typically an MDX expression of cell coordinates that returns a number. So I get a set expression, I get a numeric expression, then the string expression. What I'm specifying is the set to be ordered, what it's ordering by, and then how I'm actually ordering it. And so if I come back here, I say, I want you to order sales territory, country, and product category. And then what do I want you to order by? I want you to order by internet sales amount. So I kind of copy this here, and I throw it in my function. Excuse me. And then it says, and how do you want to order it? I want to order it descending. And now when I execute it, I should see, what, 8.8 million, this Australia bikes on top. And then I should probably see something like Germany bikes. I should see all the bikes up there on top. And then I should see maybe some, it looks like accessories and then some clothing. So I execute it. Do I have too many parentheses? Let's see. Let's take the non-empty out. Order, and then children. And then let's put that parentheses because I've got 2 columns here. Back in, okay. There we go, okay. So, oh wait, something broke. So I see Australia bikes on top, that 8.8 million, and then I see Australia accessories, and then Australia clothing, and then the null value, and then I see Canada bikes, and then Canada accessories, Canada clothing. So I'm seeing bikes, accessories, clothing a lot, and I'm not really seeing things in the right order the way I expect them to. And why is that? It's because this order by, let's go back to Chrome, where it says, optionally preserving or breaking the hierarchy. And I've got some options here. I can do ascending, descending, or B ascending, B descending. And what the B does is it breaks the hierarchy. So if I say B descending and execute, now I'm getting it in the order I expected to get it. With all the bikes on first, I'm breaking those hierarchy values. And now I'm ordering it strictly on internet sales amount. Not within the hierarchy, but outside the hierarchy. So that's the right order, so pay attention to that. So again, no order by, instead use the order, specify what you want to sort on, that's this, specify what you're sorting, I'm sorting internet sales amount, and then specify how you're sorting it. So I can actually put that non-empty back, and that should work. Let's see. Let's put non-empty outside the order. There we go. We get rid of all the nulls, and now we've got just this very kind of nice, easy to read, tabular data coming back out. Okay, so I don't think we'd be complete in talking about MDX if we didn't at least talk about a little bit about calculated calculations and calculations inside queries. So what you've seen so far is like internet sales amount, and just to kind of show you some different numbers, I want to show you not just internet sales amount, but I also want to show you, let's look at standard product cost. I'll make that a little bit wider so you can see it. This is kind of useless, so I don't need that right now, but we'll make this a little wider. Okay, see that internet standard product cost? I'm just going to drag that and drop that into my query. And now when I execute this, let's see, on columns, okay, let's take out the order because we don't need it. Just want to simplify it. Okay, so we'll simplify that. We'll take that out. So I want to just show, I'm trying to simplify the query so I don't, first of all, I don't get in my own way, and so that you can see the calculated numbers without a lot of overhead. So I feel like I've got an extra, oh, there it is. Okay. Okay, so there's internet standard product cost, and let's put internet sales amount right next to it. And then now we've got a weird error, so I take my tuple and I make it a set. Uh-oh. Take my parentheses out. Okay. There we go. Okay, so internet sales amount, $700,000, internet standard product cost, $262,000. Okay, and what I want to do is I want to show the profit between these two numbers. So the way I do that is I use a with keyword, and the way I do that is just start the query off with a with, and then with member. And this, if you're used to SQL, you're probably used to CTEs or common table expressions. And we see that it's similar syntax actually in MDX, where you're going to basically, a CTE in SQL is specifying a view of your data and then using it in the query. And we're going to do that here, except we're going to do our own custom calculation. So I want profit, internet sales amount minus internet standard product cost. And the way to do that is I just name it. So I'm going to say with member profit. And then just like a CTE, in fact, I can actually put it, I can say with member measures profit, and just like a CTE, I use as, and then I take those exact same things that you saw before, that internet sales amount, put that there, and then my calculation. In this case, it's just going to be a minus. So I'm going to take sales amount minus the product cost. Okay, and now I've got it named. So I'm going to put some space here so that there's a little more definition in between there. Okay, so now I've got the member, and now just use it. And the way I can use it is I can say select profit, so it's measures.profit, on columns from AdventureWorks. Execute that, and I see $12 million is my total profit. And just like you saw before, or where I can say, okay, now that I have it, now that I have the total, let's do it based on product categories, just like you saw earlier. So I'm going to copy that, paste it on rows, highlight it, and now that's my profit for accessories, bikes, and clothing. In fact, I can do the same thing. I can take these three so that you can see that I'm doing the math correctly, and then just comma delimit them. Excuse me. Take the product cost. Okay, and again, I'm dealing with a set here, right? So use curly braces around it instead of parentheses. Highlight, execute it, and now you can kind of see like internet sales amount, $700,000 minus 262 equals 438 in profit. And then bikes, $28 million minus 16 million equals about 11 million in profit. Okay, so this is very powerful. This kind of custom member that I have is pretty awesome, and I can use it. And if I wanted to, instead of this product categories children, I can change that to like calendar year, just like you saw earlier. So if I take calendar year, let's see, here's calendar year, just drop it right here. Let's do date dot calendar year dot children, and then highlight that, and you're seeing the exact same values by calendar year. So I know I'm running out of time, but there's one last thing I wanted to show you, and that is I can do the same thing in my cube definition. So inside the cube definition, I created this profit calculation, and that measures.internet sales amount minus measures.internet standard product cost, where that specifies my profit. I'm specifying this in the cube, and notice that I've got this under a display folder called custom. And if I come here and I look at my measures, under values custom, I have profit. And now I can just drag that and put that in my values. And now that same profit that you were seeing earlier is all lined up correctly. Okay, so what I did is I took an MDX query, I defined profit, and tested it. And once I had the calculation correct, I just put it inside my cube, and then I right-clicked on the cube, and then just deployed it. And as long as I named it correctly, everybody who uses that cube can now take advantage of it. So the difference between defining it in the query is only I can use it in the query, and then when I define it in the cube, anybody can use it in the cube. In fact, if I was in reporting services, I could go to my data set, this is standard reporting services, go to Query Designer, and I could say, please show me my custom values here. Let's see if I've got it. I might need to reconnect. Let's see. Custom, profit, drag it, click OK, and now I've got profit here, and now I'm creating a report with that profit data that you saw earlier. Pretty easy. So, and again, MDX, you can use the Query Designer here, and you can see the MDX that reporting services generates in order to create a query here. That might be another good way to learn MDX. Okay, it looks like there's a question, and let's see what it is. It says, hang on one second, I got to kind of expand a little bit because I can't read it. Okay. Oh, somebody said, can you increase your font size? Sorry, did I miss the explanation on advantage of MDX over T-SQL? You might have. What's the server performance using MDX versus straight T-SQL queries, execution time? Any application type more suited for MDX? Okay, so MDX is much faster generally because the data is pre-aggregated. So MDX business intelligence cubes, analysis services cubes, do the math for you behind the scenes automatically. And they consolidate those calculations, like you just saw me create a custom calculation and you saw it get consolidated. So the reason why we report off of cubes is because the data is already aggregated. MDX is super fast when it's going against already aggregated data. Time comparisons are super easy, and we didn't get into that. Maybe we'll do another session where we talk about time comparisons and things like that. Aggregation is consistent, meaning when I define a measure, when I define a calculation inside the cube, every report uses the same math. Every Excel pivot table uses the same math. Every data poll uses the same math. And that's very powerful. Also, the rules for these calculations are defined by the business and not some guy who just created his own Excel report and decided to define gross sales however they wanted to define it, not the way the business defines it. And then you saw how SSRS works seamlessly with SAS, and we can secure data in the cubes where we can't necessarily easily secure like cellular data inside SQL. You know, securing inside SQL a very specific cell is possible, but it can take an awful lot of work. And then in analysis services, it's native. You just say they can't see any of these cells. If they're trying to look at data outside their region or outside their purview, we can just block it off from them very easily, and that's it. Anyway, thanks for coming, guys. Thanks for your questions, and please feel free to ping me offline if you have any other questions. This is me. My website's ikeellis.com. I have a YouTube channel and I blog, and I'm a founder of the SQL Past Book Readers Club, where we read SQL books together. We're reading a book on Hadoop starting in January, so check us out there. And I'm the founder of the San Diego Tech Immersion Group, where we read like development books like MVC and JavaScript books together. And then that's my Twitter handle and my phone number. And if you want to email me, it's just ike@ikeellis.com. Thanks a lot for your time, guys.